I didn't know where God was leading me and how strong he was trying to make me in that time. But while I was walking through it, it just seemed lonely. I would say that
Right.
in high school, I felt lonely, even though I was homecoming queen, even though I knew a lot of people and I socialized with a lot of people.
Today on the show, former competitive cheerleader and the current head coach of Morgan State University Acrobatics and Tumbling, Regina Smith, is up next. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the world of sports with retired athletes, current athletes, and everyone that helps make the sports world great. As a quick reminder, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, make a note now. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen or watch. You can find all the information at 5thquarterpodcast.com. Now, grab your iced tea or your coffee, get ready to be motivated and inspired because this is where the real stories are told. Now, let me introduce you to my guest. She's a 12-year competitive cheerleader through high school and ending her career after 1 year at Illinois State University. Transitioning into coaching, Regina Smith found her stride. During her coaching career to date, Smith has captured over 30 national championship college and high school titles and 50 plus top 3 finishes for cheerleading, dance, gymnastics, and mascots at the collegiate level. She's the first and current head coach of acrobatics and tumbling at Morgan State University, first and only historically black college or university Division I program to offer the sport. I couldn't be more excited to welcome to the show Coach Regina Smith.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to share my story and be a part of Fifth Quarter.
I am too. And for all of you out there wondering how I know you, it's because one of your students is the daughter of one of my friends, Jordan Sanders. She's the daughter of Relis and Kim Sanders. And Relis, for you Memphis people, Relis is the treasurer of the Memphis Rebounders. So that is how I reached out to you. I was stalking you for several months and I was like, Relis, please give me an interview with her. And so he came through on that. And so we've chatted and just so excited to introduce you and everyone else, not only to the Memphis community, but to everybody that listens, because we have people that listen all over the country, up in Canada, and I think a few people overseas as well. So very excited to introduce this. So Morgan State University, that's where you're currently coaching. And a
Yes.
quick reminder, guys, we've had a previous graduate from Morgan State University on here, and I will bring up her episode in just a little bit. But let's get started with, so this is your third year, correct, as the head coach?
Correct. Yes, this is my third year. So my first year was building the program, and
Mhm.
then the last 2 years we've competed. So this will be our second season of competition in 2025.
So, and we're going to get into like how you built that a little bit later in the program, but who is Regina Smith today? How would you define yourself?
Ooh, so
I
that's a tough
started off
one.
I started off hard,
You
right?
started with a hard question. Um, I will say Regina Smith is a humble, um, God-fearing Christian mother, wife, coach, to many others. I do believe that I walk by faith and not by sight. And I think because of that and my journey with Christ, it has gotten me to where I am today.
That's a good one. That is a good one. When you were little, I'm going to throw this one in there because I'm always fascinated. When you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A preacher.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting.
So my grandfather, who I admire the most, he was a pastor in the AME church, and I grew up with going with him to church and writing his
Mhm.
sermons and playing on the stage and pretending that I was a pastor. So when I was younger, I wanted to be a youth minister. And my parents told me they didn't make enough money, so I need to dream bigger. So there you have it. So I went into education to be a teacher. And that lasted for a short stint. And
Yeah.
here I
Where did you grow up? So let's go back to the beginning. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Albany, Georgia. So lived there through my elementary first years of elementary, and then we moved to DeKalb, Illinois, and from
Mhm.
DeKalb, Illinois, to Bolingbrook, Illinois. We lived in Bolingbrook, Illinois till I graduated high school. And then I went on to Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois, and then got my first collegiate coaching job in Pennsylvania. And so I
Right.
kind of traveled around the world, or I should say the nation, and got landed back to here in Baltimore, Maryland.
You know, it's funny because we've talked on the phone before this interview, and you you were born in the South, kind of
Mhm.
raised in the South a little bit, but most of your upbringing has been in the North.
Yes,
But you still, from what we were talking about, you still have that incredible connection to the South.
yes. Once the Georgia peach, always the Georgia peach, baby. They ain't gonna take that out of me.
But you know, it's so true. I think that people that are born down here, you know, no matter where you go, I think it's just something that's in your soul.
Yes,
You
yes,
know, just no
yes.
matter what. I have a cousin, she was not born in the South. She lives in California, but her father was from Tennessee, and she would come every summer and spend the summer with her grandparents. She considers herself both. Like she has such she loves the South. So it's just, you know, it's something about, I don't know, it's a soul thing. It's just a
It
soul
is.
thing.
It is.
Yeah.
And every summer we would go down to our grandparents in Alabama, in Low County, South Carolina. And my dad's side is Geechee, from Waltersboro area. My mother's side is from Hartford,
Yeah.
Alabama, and that's home. So
Yeah.
people say, "Where you going?" I'm going home. Because that's what I consider home, actually, not the Midwest. So
You know, it's funny because you're talking about all those places, and I'm like suddenly hungry for breakfast. um, okay, so let's talk about, you know, when did sports first come into your life?
I was 2 years old.
2 years old.
So my sister was taking dance class. I'll never forget Miss Murphy's dance studio in Albany, Georgia. And I tell you, this woman, she had to been 80 when I joined her dance studio. I mean, just full of energy. And I told my mom I wanted to do that class, and she was like, "You're too young." And so Miss Murphy said, "Well, we'll give her a trial," because I was
Wait a
like,
minute. How much were you talking at 2 years old?
I talked a lot. I read by 3 years old. So I mean, yeah. So I talked a lot, and I would stand outside the dance class and do the whole routine.
Oh, oh,
And so
that's so
Murphy
cute.
said, "Let's let her try it." I was 2.5. I went into my first dance class, and that's, never turned back. So I started dance when I was 2.5. And then um, I did diving. So I watched my sister swim, and I wanted to
Wow.
be a part of the swim club too. So I started diving and swimming at 4. And then
Oh my God.
yeah, like my parents never had a restriction on if I wanted
Right.
to try it, they would let me try it. So when I got to 8 years old, I was cheering and decided I wanted to do cheerleading. So that just came out of nowhere. We had moved to Bolingbrook, Illinois at that time. And
Right.
I was like, all the other girls cheer, I want to cheer. So I tried out for cheerleading, and I kept doing gymnastics on the side. So and dance, really, because I danced
Mhm.
until I was 12, and I did gymnastics until I was 16, and then competitive cheerleading took over my life in high school.
But
So
you know, they're all, except for the, well, the diving a little bit because it's the form, it's the
yeah.
tumbling part of it, you know.
Yep.
But you know, all of those go together. All
Hmm.
of them. They're all interactive with each other. Um
Yep.
when when you got into high school, what
Hmm.
were your thoughts then about what you were going to do after high school? Or did you have any thoughts?
I did. So it was weird. So going back, I did play basketball in 8th grade, and then I decided to try out for basketball in high school. And there was a girl, I'll never forget, her name was Nikki Barnett. She was huge. She stuffed me in the ball, and I was like, I think I'm going back to cheer practice. So I ended up playing soccer and ran track in high school. But I knew that I wanted to do something with students. Originally I was getting recruited by University of Purdue, and
Mhm.
I wanted to go into graphic design originally. So like I kind of had I always wanted to be a youth minister, but my parents was like, no, you need to find something that's
Right.
gonna sustain your life. And so I end up saying, oh, I'll do graphic design because I found that fun on the side because computers was just a big thing.
Yeah.
We had a computer in our house, and I just loved tinkering with the graphic design. Okay. And then I was like, yeah, this is boring. I don't really want to do that. So I went back to education and I said, I'll be a math teacher because my favorite teacher was Barbara Borland, who was a math teacher in sixth grade for me. And
Mhm.
so for me, I wanted to kind of resemble what she was to all of
Right.
us as a teacher. So I said, okay, I'll go into education. And that kind of carried me through high school, but I don't think I ever said, "Oh, I want to coach." Like I
Mm.
don't remember going around saying I want to coach. It was either going to be a pastor, I was going to do graphic design, or I'll do teaching. And
Right.
I thought about in college going to get a dance minor so I could be a dance teacher because I was like, I really don't like teaching in a classroom. I want to do something with my body. And my parents was like, yeah, no, you're not going to be a dance teacher. Like that's just again doesn't bring in income to
Right.
sustain yourself. So they're like, you're not going to be a dance teacher. So I never even minored as a dance teacher. And that was dance is what I loved. I started it when I was
Right.
2. I still love it to this day. So
Right.
um it was just something that I was a very obedient child. And if my parents said no, I didn't question them. I knew that I always felt that they had the best interest for me, even
I
when
would
I
s
didn't feel it was right.
I would say that's more respectful than obedient.
Mhm.
You know what's interesting is I listened to all those things that you talked about just then,
Mhm.
and the graphic design where yes, it is creative, but it's also in a computer, and then the math part of it. So
Mhm.
your brain has basically straddles two different worlds, and mine's kind of like that too.
Yes.
So that's obviously why we just hit it off. Um, but if you look at the youth ministry, to me, that's the same thing as a coach.
It is. But I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
You know? So I
Yeah.
think a lot of the times as we try to find ourselves in our path,
Yes.
I'm calling it youth ministry, not really understanding that youth ministry doesn't have to be in the pulpit, right?
Right.
So
Exactly.
in my mind, I need to be in the pulpit if I'm saying I'm going to be a youth minister. As I continued to go through this journey with my coaching career, I realized I was actually walking in my calling as a
Mm,
youth pastor, not realizing that just because I wasn't in a pulpit didn't qualify me to be a youth pastor.
right. Right. Yeah. You're a youth minister every day.
Amen. Just
Every single
every
day.
day.
That's right. Even when you don't want to be.
Even when I don't want to be, every day, Lord knows.
So let's talk about you growing up as this young athlete. So
Mhm.
were you naturally confident when you started all these activities?
I don't kn I really I don't know. I just knew that I wanted to be good. So I'll
Mm,
never forget my first year of cheerleading, we missed tryouts. We had my family had a family emergency. I think it was my godfather, he had passed away. We had to go down
right.
for a funeral and I wasn't able to make the tryouts. So they put me on the B team in our age group. And I just remember being like, I'm going to be on that A team one of these days. And I worked all year to be on that A team. And the next year, I got to try out because I told my mom, we cannot miss tryouts.
Right.
Got to try out. So I tried out and I made the top team. And from that moment forward, I never looked back. And so I think with me, it was the desire to be good. I've always wanted to be good and make not just my parents proud, but make God proud of what he designed in me.
Right. Um, did you have any role models in your family or community that helped influence those passions? You've talked about your sister
Mhm.
for athletics and leadership. So you've talked about your sister. Was there anyone else in the community that helped kind of? inspire you?
N no. It was always like, um, my godfather, he always said things go better with love. That's his slogan. Um,
Mhm.
and so, just putting that love behind everything that I do, I think
Right.
that passion was a self passion and a self motivation and just being inspired by what God allowed me to do during this time of my life. I always say as long as my arms work, my hands work, and my feet work, and my legs work, I'm gonna honor him in as much as I can
Right.
in all capacity. And I think that
Right.
really helped navigate me to be that person. I mean, when I don't really know if I ever really had a role model outside of my grandfather and Miss Borland, because Miss Borland
Right.
and Miss Page were two teachers that really impacted my life.
You
So,
know, I think, and I would hope today even that teachers impact kids' lives, and I'm sure there are many across the country that do that. You
yes.
know, being a teenager in high school can be very difficult. You're not quite a child anymore, and you're not quite an adult anymore either, or not yet. So, what did being in high school teach you about resilience and teamwork that
Mhm.
helped you later on?
Really just the fight to never give up. I mean, I think the coach that I had in high school was, oh, um, bless her heart. Not for everyone, right? And
Right.
um, she had her favorites. I remember she would put people in positions that really probably shouldn't be in those roles or positions because for whatever reason that was her coaching method and that's how she wanted to
Right.
coach it. And one I remember one year it was like all of us versus our coach and we just band together to do what's right and make
Mm,
sure that we showed her what we were capable of doing because I felt like she never really valued a lot of the skill sets that we brought in from Pop Warner because a lot of us had came from Pop Warner cheer.
right.
And so I just remember all of us sticking together to be the best. And we had made it probably the furthest in state that year
Mhm.
because we were so close and connected. And so I think high school has really taught me really self-discipline and self motivation to make sure that I don't be who everyone else boxed me in to be. I wanted to
Right.
who God called me to be, not what you thought of me and who I should be. And so I think that's what helped shaped where I am today, for
So
sure.
that's an interesting question because my next question was going to be how did being an athlete define your identity in high school? So
Mhm.
when you were in high school, how did you see yourself first and foremost?
Ooh, I saw myself as an insecure person. I was very insecure because the way I was raised, as an African American, a black person, I didn't talk the way that black people felt I should talk.
Right.
And then my skin color didn't fit anybody else, any of my white friends, my Mexican friends. So
Right.
I often got made fun of from both sides because I
Yeah.
wasn't black enough to my black peers.
Right.
And yet I didn't have the skin color of my white and Mexican peers.
Right.
So I was often insecure about who I was because of the things that were told to me.
Mhm.
And even though I fought to overcome it, it still played a really significant part on, am I good enough? I always
Right.
question like, do I have what she had? Like I know I'm better than her, but yet I don't get treated the same way. So it was just one of those, insecure moments of my life where, I didn't know where God was leading me and how strong he was trying to make me in that time. But while I was walking through it, it just seemed lonely. I would say that
Right.
in high school, I felt lonely, even though I was homecoming queen, even though I knew a lot of people and I socialized with a lot of people. At till this day, there was only one person from high school that was in my wedding and even now I don't keep in full contact with, because I didn't feel that any of the friendships that I had in high school were true and
Yeah.
real and authentic, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And speaking to some of that is, I think, a little bit, especially for people from maybe small towns. I don't know necessarily about larger schools, but you're also, as a teenager, everyone's changing,
Yes.
and changing rapidly. And I
Mhm.
think that, the friendships that evolve from high school or middle school into adulthood, they have to be really strong and involved and evolve together.
Right.
Because I think that it's difficult to maintain those friendships, and I'm using air quotes for anybody listening, um, because you're just different people and you change so much between what 12 and 30,
Yes.
that it's honestly, I would say, typically not true friendships, because
Yes.
everybody is changing so much. And then
Yes.
you add all that other baggage onto it. And
Mhm.
and it is do you has that insecurity followed you today?
I will say to an extent. I had moments in my life and periods in my life where I was confident in who I was. And then I remember walking into a restaurant, I'll never forget. I had children at that time. My
And
son,
you still
and I
do.
still do. I still do. But I remember my son was a baby, and
Right.
there was a girl that bullied me from middle school through high school, and she walks in the restaurant, and I immediately shrink.
Um,
And I was like, I got frustrated with myself because I was like, how has I allowed, like, I didn't even know that she was controlling me, even as an adult being married
right,
with a child,
right.
until I saw her.
Mhm.
And from that moment on, I said, I will never let
Yeah,
those people who bullied me, belittled me, control my life. And so, even in the settings that I have found myself in coaching, where there's moments and glimpses of experiences where you're trying to do the right thing, you're trying to give people an opportunity, and people you care about, people you thought you can trust, and even then they take advantage of you in this situation and circumstance, and then
yep,
drag your name into the mud, and I think from that part it put a little damper on me, and I was like, was I really that type of person? Because I didn't really think that that's who I am.
right,
And I had to go back and be like, no, that's not who I am. Whatever her false ideologies or their false ideologies of me or perceptions of me is not true. I had to really, push through those moments in my
mm,
career. Little to none moments, but they were significant enough to make me have insecurities about,
sure,
is this really who I am? Questioning, do I possess those type of qualities? And then quickly I'm reminded that I don't. And so I think for me, it's just staying true to my identity and who God called me to be, for sure.
yeah. No, I can definitely relate to everything you just said. There are times when I go home, I'm from, as we talked about, I was from a really small town. There are times when
Mhm.
I go home and um, I'm back to being that little girl again, feeling like everybody is just looking down on me.
Mhm.
So definitely I can. Okay, well, it's getting heavy this morning. We're recording. Us okay, let's just move on a little bit.
Yes,
So, when did you first were you recruited by colleges in high school?
I was.
And what was that whole process like? When did you start being recruited?
So junior year, so I'll my experience was unique. So Georgia Tech University and Purdue cheer coaches reached out to me
Right.
and wanted me to come be on their team. And in the same year, I was like, yes, my godbrother, he's Troy Reddick. He played for Auburn University, number 66, War Eagles. I have to throw that out there. I'm a big fan of Auburn because of him. You know,
Oh, maybe
so
he could be on my podcast.
absolutely. And so he was getting recruited to Georgia Tech too at the same time.
Right.
And so we are like, yes, we'll go to Georgia Tech together. Well, in that same year, both the football coach and the cheer coach got fired for scandals.
Oh,
So we were
geez.
like, okay, plan B. So we go back to drawing board. That's when I was getting recruited by Purdue and UIC and some of the other schools in Illinois. And uh, ultimately, what's interesting was I was not recruited by Illinois State University. I had gotten a scholarship to attend Illinois State University that covered full tuition, and my mom and dad said, "You're going to Illinois State. It's number top 10 for
Right.
education in the nation. You're going to go to Illinois State University." So I had full rise at Indiana University. I'd never even applied to Purdue. We never even got there because Purdue's head coach actually got fired that year as well.
It was the
And
firing
it's
year.
crazy. And then UIC was in the city, and my parents was like, "Nope, you're not going to walk downtown Chicago from a dorm to your classes." That's a no, 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 no. They knew me. And so it was there were some other schools like University of Dayton, Grambling State that reached out, North Carolina A&T. But ultimately my parents made my decision and said, "We're going to send you to Illinois State." That's how I got there. So had to try out for cheerleading. The first year I was an alternate for the cheer program. The second year, I made the cheerleading team. The third year, I actually got injured and had to redo a recovery.
Wow.
There was a switch of coaches. And then so my senior year, they let me come try out. And I talked to the coach, and I had already been inducted as a student government member and decided that that commitment was going to be too much to do both. So
Wow.
my senior year, I actually did not cheer. But the coach and I end up, Coach Steve and I end up keeping in contact for the longest because he was also the assistant gymnastics coach there at that time. He's now a head coach of a gymnastics program up in, I think, Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
But we had kept in contact, and then I would go back and I spoke often to the competitive cheer program that they did. So, you know, it took a whirlwind, but I found my niche. I cheered for a full season, a full year at Illinois
Right.
State. I tore my rotary cuff in my junior year.
Makes me
Um,
hurt.
yeah, that was painful. I tell you,
Yeah.
that's more painful than childbirth.
Ooh.
Uh,
Ooh.
and that took a long time to recover. And I don't recommend anybody, and I just wasn't myself. I wasn't able to produce what I was producing before
Sure.
I got injured. And so when I came back, I just wasn't the full Regina that I was before, and realized that, I had a bigger opportunity with student government. So I went on and moved on to that part. I
You know,
did stay in athletics though afterward.
so we've had other athletes who've been injured and ultimately it ended their careers as well.
Yeah.
So when you're going through that recovery process, was your mind already thinking of a plan B or a plan
No,
C? You were still like, I'm going back to cheer.
I'm going back.
Yeah.
I was going to do it. I was determined, but I just like the tumbling wasn't there.
Yeah.
And being a cheerleader, you had to tumble. Um,
Exactly.
and every little thing hurt, and I think the wear and tear on bodies that people don't realize that cheerleaders and gymnasts and, any athlete does prior to 25 years old does
Right.
really affect their overall health. And I think I was kind of naive on thinking that I could return the same. Some
Yeah.
people do return the same, but I think it's also God ordained, and I think God had a bigger plan for me because in that season of my life, my senior year, I actually was an intern for athletics. So it gave
Mm,
me an opportunity to open up a door for me to realize that I do like athletics and I
sure.
like it in a different capacity. And then because I was with student government in a leadership position, it allowed me to travel, meet other universities that got me to see more of what was out there and what
Mm,
was available to me. Had I not had those opportunities between both, I don't know if I would be in athletics today. So even though it may have seemed like a wrench into my plan. It was, something that worked together for the greater good of what God had called me to do.
I love the fact that your mind allowed you to see those other opportunities
Mhm.
and take them. And I think that that is really important for athletes as they grow up, is to see to see all those opportunities and not have this blind spot on. You've always got to be thinking an injury can occur at any moment,
Yes.
and you have to, I think, in order to have, a healthy mental capacity, I think you
Mhm.
have to be looking at opportunities and what other things you can do and what are your other interests,
Yes.
in order to be a completely well-rounded person and to be mentally healthy, I think, to
Amen.
help you get through those hard times. Um, what was it like cheering at Illinois State?
Man, it was it was fun. So there was about 40 of us on roster in uniform, and there's about 5 alternates each year.
Mm,
Um, and I was the only Black cheerleader that year. So I was the first one in 9 years prior to that to be
right.
a female Black cheerleader. So there was a lot of attention on me,
Sure.
probably
Sure.
more than I wanted and expected. But there was a lot of pressure from not only myself, but from the team because I knew that I had to uphold the skill sets that my white counterparts held, and I couldn't slack. I had to be better than the best
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
team in order to keep my spot. And so for me, it was pressure from that standpoint, but then pressure from the community just because I was the only one.
Yeah.
When there's little girls, all the football team is majority diverse, and they're coming at me wanting to take pictures because I'm the only person they see in the lineup.
Right.
So there was some pressure from both sides, but it was still a lot of fun. Like I loved game day. Illinois State's atmosphere was awesome. To this day, it holds a dear, special place in my life. And the moments that I got to cheer in Redbird Arena and in Hancock Stadium, really really helped shaped my coaching experience for the Division III and NAI athletes that I coached because they didn't get an opportunity to cheer for Division I, and I wanted
Right.
to make sure that they had the same experience that I had. And so as a coach, I brought that experience to them and helped shape and culture that experience for them in that small Division III division or NAI capacity.
Right. So really quickly, because I'm fascinated about that. So
Yeah.
what was the difference between those divisions and Division I as a cheer?
So Division I typically at good programs, I'll say that.
Mhm. A good programs.
We
Because
were
I
ranked
because
up in
I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, like, what would be the difference?
yes, so good programs that are under athletics, right? A lot of cheer programs, and I will say this very clearly, a lot of cheer programs, one, are not considered a sport because they aren't considered a sport through federal court rulings in 2010. So
Right.
not considered a sport. They're not under athletics. They're actually under student activities, student development, student
Ah,
affairs, that division. So there's no budget typically. Most of the time, kids have to pay for their own goods and pay
right.
for everything. They don't travel with the teams typically if they're under student affairs because there's no budget. If they're
Right.
under athletics and they're under the marketing, which is usually what they're under, if they're under athletics, they have a budget that allows them to get all their practice gear, shoes, everything paid for. So you're not coming out of pocket.
Mhm.
Illinois State happened to be one of those programs where we were talented enough that they gave scholarships, book scholarships, in the amount of up to 2,500.
Mm,
So my year I had 2,500. So my year that I cheered in 2003 to 4, I had 2,500 book scholarship that was divided into 2 semesters.
right.
Um, so there is a scholarship that comes with it, typically at Division I, and then there is depending on opportunity for you to travel and cheer for your teams throughout their traveling season. So
Sure.
Illinois State, we cheered for volleyball, men's and women's basketball. We had to attend every single sport and sit in the stand. And then we cheered for football.
Wow.
So we stayed on the road a lot, and it was
Sure.
6 to 8 of us, depending on what the budget was, that we traveled to certain and major events. But I'll never forget that year, our women's made it in the tournament. So we got to go to Seattle and we got to go to Missouri.
Sure.
And we got to travel with them because they were winning that year. So it was good times. And I wanted to be able to mimic that for my
Sure.
Division III school. So even like at Teal, we would travel with them and go cheer away games for football. For basketball, it was a little different just because of the conference rules. So
Yeah.
we weren't able to go to all the away games for basketball, but we did try to make it an opportunity when it allowed itself to be.
So those were some of the things that you brought to the Division III and the
Yes.
NAIA.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because they, again, and also mascots. Mascots was big, like Reggie the Redbird. Hey Tim. So we got to know some of the Redbirds. You typically don't know the mascots because
Sure.
they keep their identity very sacred and private so that, nobody attacks them or whatever. But needless to say, I became really good friends with Reggie the Redbird. He was awesome. His name's Tim. And he was from Sarasota, Florida. And he was a pivotal point for our cheerleading program, and really just the overall camaraderie at Illinois State, like just bringing that knack and flair that really
Mm,
got kids involved. Um,
sure.
so I really implemented, because Teal College at the time didn't have a mascot, so I implemented Tommy the Tomcat. Um,
Uh-huh.
a fight song, because at Division I you have fight songs,
Gotta
so
have a fight
gotta
song. Oh
have
my
a
gosh. Gotta
fight
have a
song.
fight
So
song.
I worked with the band director. We made the fight song, and till this day they use it. And then at Ottawa University, it was kind of the same thing, just implementing the mascot a little bit better. His name was Gibby. Gibby was sad. His uniform was so sad. So we got him a custom outer uniform, bless and we end up doing our research and added the color red because the
Mhm.
Ottawa Indians is Ottawa University. There was a connection there, and their tribal colors were red, and yet red was not in any of our university colors.
Oh
So I
my
said,
God.
oh, so I said,
That's crazy.
crazy, right? So I was like, if we're going to be a true Ottawan university that represents the Ottawa tribe, I think we
Sure.
need to add red. So I did this whole spiel on why it's important to add that color. And now Ottawa University has red in their colors, thanks to me
For
over.
anybody out there, that's Canada. Just in case anybody's like, "What's she talking about?" Um, you know, that's l you know, that's more than a lot of coaches do. You talk about when I do career coaching, I always talk about when you go in for an interview, you want to look at the person that's interviewing you, look at the company and say, how can I make them better? And
Yes,
you went into all of these places and left them better
yes,
than when you started
yes,
and changed lives and changed the perception and changed the culture of these programs and these institutions. And I love that. And I think that, you know, who would have thought when you were like 2 or 3 or 4 years old that this would be things that you would do? You
never
went
crossed my mind.
it's really, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but, I love all that because I think that it's something that I coach a lot about, trying, how can you make something else better? And
Mhm.
I wish more people would look at the things that they have in them and how they can make the organization better in whatever capacity, even if it's a little bit. Um,
Yes.
w- when you made that decision to stop cheer, Was
Mhm.
it like slowly over a few months? Was it like one day you just woke up and said, I'm not going to try this anymore. I'm going to do the student government. Like, was that an immediate decision or was it something you kind of thought about for a while?
I think I was self-reflecting. I always believed that I needed to write my pros and cons. I'm a big pros and cons.
Yes. Yes.
And I remember I journal a lot, and I remember writing down my pros on why I would go back to
Mhm.
cheer, and then my cons on what I would miss from cheer. And I think my pros and cons together collectively didn't shape where God was trying to take me. And
Mm,
when I realized that what I was trying to force fit into my life wasn't going to work, I had to submit and release that um season of my life.
right.
It wasn't a overnight aha moment. It was like um a slow progression. I knew
Yeah.
the time was nearing. I just didn't think it would come as soon as it did.
Right.
Um, but I knew that that time and season of my life was time for me to hang up um my shoes and my pom-poms, as they say it. And I had to move forward to what I needed to do next. And I think that kind of helped lead me into coaching, because I wasn't even supposed to be at the high school. I had taken a job in financial services in sales, and went abroad and studied abroad because I was like, okay, I want to
Where
study
did you
abroad.
where did you study abroad at?
Paris, France. I studied
Oh
at the
my gosh.
yes,
I've been there for
girl.
one weekend. I
Oh
wish I'd done that
my God.
after college. I wish I'd gone for a year to Paris.
Yes. My only regret in my life thus far has been not going longer. I wish I would have.
How long
I
were
was
you there?
the whole summer. So I
Okay.
studied overseas, and I wish I would have stayed longer. I wish I
Mm,
would have taken the time to do it a year. I went overseas to Paris, France, Negocia School of Business. It now has a new name. But studied over there and then backpacked every weekend with my fellow Illinois State
yeah, yes.
mates, and we got a chance to see all of Europe. And I remember getting a call from my dad saying, "Hey, I just drove past your workplace and the place looked empty." And I'm like, okay. He was like, when are you supposed to start? I was like, August. And he was like, all right, well, you might want to reach out to him. So I reach out to him and nothing comes back. So I'm like, Dad, they're not responding to my email. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna run back over there. And sure enough, he took a picture and it was like business closed, like for good, and went
Oh
out
my
of
gosh.
business. And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
so much for letting us new hires know
Mm,
that you're no longer in business. So I then started to panic, and I reached out to all my mentors and said, hey, I need a job. I'm coming home in August. I
right.
I need something. And they had a position in education. In special education, actually, for me to go be a teacher assistant and work with special needs and IEP students. So I had a certain amount of students who were
Right.
on my plate. My brother at that time, who is now deceased, he had a IEP and was in the special education department. So I knew that department well.
Right.
And I also was a best buddy in high school. So that was something that was very dear to my heart. So I said, yeah, I'll take it and I'll see you in August. And then the dance coach at the time, she had quit and stepped down. So they were like, hey, we need a dance coach and you have a dance background. Will you want to do that too? And I was like, sure. So I got two jobs in one. And that kind of kicked off my coaching career, really.
And again, it's about looking for those opportunities, putting yourself in place. And can I just say networking? I don't think
Yes.
young people understand how important networking is.
Yes.
Like,
It's so
it's
important.
so important.
So important. And I still to this day keep in contact with people that I've crossed paths with along the way.
Mhm. Right.
For the longest, the president of Illinois State at the time was Dr. Bowman. He was my reference. And
Wow.
people were like, there's no way the president of a university, as large as Illinois State is, could be your reference. So they would call him and he could actually speak on my behalf.
Yes. Yes.
And they were like, whoa, if the president can be a reference for a student, what did she do on that campus? I
Exactly.
need to hire
Exactly.
her. And so obviously Dr. Bowman retired and no longer is in that capacity or that role at Illinois State, but holds a dear place. Him and his wife hold a dear place to my heart because they were such pivotal influencers in me in higher education.
So let's talk about that first teaching role then when you come back from Paris
Yep.
and you're the dance instructor, right?
Yep.
Um, how did you navigate that first semester, that first few months? Like how did you was it just an easy thing to do, or what were there challenges, or did you have to like reprogram your brain to say, I'm in charge now?
No, I mean, I think I just jumped right into the role. I'm a bossy person. I love bossing people, I guess, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I just jumped right into the role. We were in time crunch at that time.
Mhm.
First game was like September. So we had like
Right.
weeks to put something together.
Oh
So
my
I like
gosh.
literally flipped everything and met with the students online and because by that time we had online
Yeah.
conversation, met with students online and then brought us all together for a quick meeting and then realized we didn't have enough uniforms for everybody. Oh, it was a mess. Had to order uniforms. It was chaotic. But needless to say, work had to get done and I just jumped right into it and dealt with some crazy parents. And
Crazy parents,
they're
crazy
crazy.
parents.
I always said I will never be one of them parents. But these parents is crazy these days. And end up having a really good season. Till
Right.
this day, the dance program has turned around. I remember them calling me saying that I was the fourth coach in 3 years. So there was
Wow.
a lot of quitting because parents did not want parents wanted to run the program.
There's
And
still a lot of parents that wanna run programs.
and I'm like, y'all, like nobody's gonna recruit your kid in college if you're running
Right.
the program.
Right.
And I think that was a hard lesson for them to learn when their child was so talented and couldn't get on a dance team.
Mhm.
I think that spoke a lot of volume. So
Talent is not everything, and I
not
think that,
everything.
there's so many kids out there that especially, they have their parents, they have all these people around them telling them that, "Oh, you're so good. They need to make you do this and make you do that," and, that's just not it, at all. Um,
Amen.
so you've built multiple programs from scratch.
Yes.
How do you approach creating a team culture when none has existed before, or maybe when a bad culture has existed? How do you create the positive team culture?
I think for me, it's always been lead by example. That's just kind
Mm,
of who I
yes,
am. Like, I got to lead by example. If they don't see it in me, how can I expect them to do something that they don't see? They don't, and a lot of times they don't know
exactly.
how to
Exactly.
do it, right? So you
Mhm.
don't know what you don't know. So I come in with the mindset that they don't know. And I
Right.
think that kind of helps me be able to break down barriers, have personal relationships with my students, my students' families. I get them to be able to trust me and me trust them. And so they know that when I bring groups together, it's going to be like-minded individuals. We
Right.
may not always gel together, may not always, you know, have a moment where we're not cohesive. But
Mhm.
if we have the structure and a foundation of respect, then it's easy to build upon respect than it is to not
Mhm.
build upon respect. So I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is just to come in with open mindset and lead by example and try to show as much love That's possible. Because I know that once I break their barriers down, then we can start coming together as one.
Sure. Sure. How, when you're in competition, like how do you handle the tension between striving for those championships and prioritizing personal growth for all
Yeah.
of your athletes?
It's a fine line.
It is a fine line.
Because there's like, woo, Jesus. Because like right now, as we're gearing up for season two, we have a strong team, a
Mm,
strong team. Um, and some of my kids that competed 8 to 9, 10 different heats last year may only got 6 heats this year.
right. Right.
Not because they're not good. It's just because it may be someone better in that position,
Right.
or they may gel with a certain individual, and I might only can put them with that person who only is limited to 6 meets or 6 heats versus the 10 heats. So
Right.
with the new reconstruction of our team and the dynamics of it, the spots have been competitive, and
Right.
trying to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to see the mat at some point throughout the season, but also build our strongest competitive group
Mm,
that can carry us through the season. It's definitely been one that I do a lot of scratch paper, draw board,
yeah.
whiteboard um, writings, and trying to put puzzle pieces together. But ultimately, I do pray about everything, and I try to
Right.
let God lead me in my decisions so that I'm not doing things that are unjust and unfair, or what I don't see would represent or reflect the light and national treasure of Morgan State or any institution I've coached prior to.
So, are you getting a lot of women that want to come to Morgan State now?
So yes, I mean, we're one of the only HBCUs. The other HBCU is Talladega in Alabama. So you either got the
Right.
cold in the Northeast or you got the hot in the Alabama. Okay, so
Did you say Talladega, like as in the
Talladega,
car race?
as in Talladega, girl, good in country. So you're going down dirt roads, you're going busy lifestyle. I mean, so it's like, you
The
know,
freezing cold, car races,
yeah.
Southern culture thing. Yeah, okay, I gotcha.
So a lot of people are tending to go to Morgan State. One is Division I versus NAI school, but two,
Right,
the culture and the environment that I've provided here at Morgan State has been very positive, and uplifting to those that have been involved in the program. And so I think for us, we're getting an outpour, a definitely an outpour of people interested in coming, and I actually have to turn people away every year, and I feel bad for.
right.
But it's no difference than any other football program or any other athletic
Exactly.
program. So I think ultimately a lot of people want to come and they want to be a part, but it's what is the fit? It's
Mm,
what's the fit?
that's
Because
right.
there are a lot of talented individuals out there, but do they fit Morgan as a
Right.
university first and foremost? Because Morgan HBCU culture is different than Talladega's HBCU culture.
I
So
would
does it
suspect so.
fit the culture, right?
Right.
Then does it fit the program? Do that person fit the program? Do we have their major, right? Because that's another thing. Like, I don't want
Yes.
coming just because of acro. Come
Right.
because of the major. And then making sure that we're going to be able to take them to the next level, because I do believe that coaching is a ministry. And so parents send me their babies as a 18-year-old trying to spread their
Yeah.
wings. Do I have it in my capacity to be able to take them to the next level that will get them to be able to be successful in the real world when they leave here? And if I don't feel that that is my assignment with that individual, I won't bring them to the campus, because it might be somebody else's assignment.
Right. Has your coaching philosophy changed over the years from when you first started out till now?
Yes, girl. I was like, win, 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 win. All I want to do is win.
Right.
And now after having children,
Mm,
losing both my mom and my brother,
Mhm.
Life perspective has definitely sunken in and changed the way that I coach. Winning is not everything to me. I think my individuals, we do pray a lot together as a team. And so having them have a strong foundation with at least acknowledging that there is something greater than them
Right.
is important to me. I don't ask them to believe in God and I don't ask them to believe what I believe, but I do tell them we do pray and that whoever they're praying to, allow that to lead them and guide
Right.
them. And so I always want to make sure that they leave with a strong foundation, knowing that there's something greater than them. And then also being able to help shape and mold them into the person that I say God called them to be. And so, yeah, my focus is that more than
Right.
winning.
Right.
If we win, we win. But that's not my priority anymore, where
Right.
it used to be reverse. I love to win. I hate losing, but I will take a loss these days.
Right. I also, I think that if you put the foundation there and you build these young people up and you give them the resources, you give them the tools, you give them the mental warm and fuzzy stuff, if you give them everything, I think success will come.
Yes.
That it may not be a win every time, but ultimately, I think that, you put that commitment in and you give them all this and they put the work in. I think Kobe Bryant said it best, you just keep doing the work
Mhm.
and the success will come.
Yes. Yes. And I do believe
Mhm.
that there's a lot of students that I've coached that I'm still in their lives with, and you see
Right.
the success. So there's a couple proud moments. One of my former students, she's now a coach for acrobatics and tumbling at East Texas Baptist University. Her name is Ashton Davis. Well, actually, that's her former name. She has a new married name, but Ashton is one of my biggest success
Right.
from a coaching standpoint. She I named her as a captain when I coached her at Ottawa University, and she went on to become a assistant coach and then a head coach. And now she's in the sport that she's never competed in, but because she had the right tools to be able
Mm,
to be a good coach, she recognized that she had the capacity to step outside of competitive cheerleading, which is her background, and be
right.
able to coach more of a technical sport because of the tools that she had been provided at such a
Sure.
young age. And just being able to mentor her, I think, has been a success. And then another success of mine is Paris. Her last name was Relish at the time. She's now married. I remember Paris reached out to me and said, Coach, I'm getting baptized. And that
Are you
meant
gonna make me cry? Are you gonna
I
make me cry?
know. So that meant the world to me because, we always talked about Christ at Ottawa or Otterbein University. That was in Westerville, Ohio. And I was just a volunteer coach. I was supposed to be filling in for a coach that was supposed to come back, and she never came back. So 3 years later, I'm still their coach. So it's like, okay. So she Paris and she was one of those kids that really listened to the guidance that I would give, and took the prayers to heart, start getting involved in church. And as an adult, she committed her life to Christ and got baptized. And I remember seeing the video. She sent me the video and I just bawled because I was like,
Oh,
oh my God, my coaching is more than just wins,
yeah.
and I think like that spoke probably the most volume in my coaching career. And since
Right.
then, I've had many, many more kids that got baptized, that has sent me an email because they um took the leadership and the love that I gave them and guidance that helped shape them to move that path. And but it definitely, that was the icebreaker for me. That was the aha moment that I realized that it's more than winning, and it changed everything for me. Yeah. So,
So, a quick question, some advice out there. What would you give to, I'm going to focus on young women. What would you give to young women right now who are athletes about life after competition?
ooh. Ooh. one, take a deep breath, because just like I did,
Mm,
like, expect the
right,
unexpected. I mean, we say that phrase often, but we don't believe it.
right.
If you go in with one mindset, it may block you from what you're really supposed to be doing. So I
Mhm.
always say be open-minded, expect the unexpected, and let God lead you to where He has for you, because it's going to be bigger and better than anything you can ever imagine. I mean, if you would have told me at 8 years old when I started competitive cheerleading that I was going to be a cheer coach, then and a dance coach and a mascot coach, turned into an acrobatics and tumbling coach at a Division I program, that would have laughed in your face and said, "There's no way," right? Because all I wanted to do was cheer on the sidelines and compete. Wear
Right.
those cute little the bows that we had, 2-inch Mickey Mouse bows. So I I say expect the unexpected, but walk with purpose, because
Mm.
um it will lead you and guide you to a path that you probably never dreamed of, thought of, or seen in your family before. And as long as you stay a course of what God has for you, it will surely bless you and those to come, for sure.
I agree with the purpose. I think that um, I, I I always try to tell people don't look for a job, look for the purpose in your
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
That will guide you
Yes.
to a better a better feeling within you and a better way to go out into the world and affect people. I definitely agree with that. When you were contemplating the Morgan State job, what
Hmm.
excited you the most about leading an HBCU's first acrobatics and tumbling team?
So before, like I told you before, I
Mhm.
was the only one of four
Right.
kids on my
Mhm.
team. And I knew every black coach in the United States for college.
Right.
That's how little
Mhm.
black coaches are, in male and female, in
Right.
our gymnastics, acrobatics and tumbling, competitive cheer, competitive dance. We're just not there. And
Right.
so I knew that if I was going to take this job, I was going to provide an opportunity for young women like my daughter who looks like me, that may not have had the opportunity to go somewhere else
Mhm.
just because of the color of their skin. Because oftentimes, what I hear from my counterparts is, I don't know how to recruit a black person. I don't know how to recruit a minority. They had me speaking at conferences on how to recruit black people or minorities. And I said, it's the same
Seriously.
way, it's no joke. I said, it's the same way you recruit anybody else that look like you. There's no difference in dialect or conversation. You just got to be willing to recruit us. And
Sure.
so at that time, acrobatics and tumbling was only 8% diversity, if that.
Mhm.
And then the coaching staff, head and assistant, was like 2 to 3%. So I knew that if I was going to take this job, I had to increase the amount of minority, um, just percentage in general. And
Right.
so bringing a whole squad, because I know it had never been done, and that was intentional for my first year, was to recruit an all minority team, because I wanted people to see that it's okay to have a minority on your team. We're just as good if you give us an opportunity to be able
Right.
to show that we are just as good. So having that opportunity and them being able to produce it open up the doors for, like, now our percentage
Right.
in minority athletes is like over 20% right now in acrobatics and tumbling specifically, but also it did the same thing with Fisk. Gymnastics did the same thing with gymnastics, artistic
Right.
gymnastics and collegiate gymnastics. So it just opened up doors of opportunities for people to see us in a different realm, in a different light, and realize that we had the same capabilities and coachabilities to be coachable, to get to that level. And I think that's what I wanted to do, was make sure that I open up the platform for us to be able to be infiltrated into a sport that I knew that we could conquer as minority individuals.
That brings up actually my next question, which you really led into that. This past summer in Paris in the Olympics, our
Yep.
American team was almost completely women of color.
Yes.
Do you see that more reflected across the country now?
In acrobatics and tumbling and gymnastics, or
Yeah.
just in sports as
Um,
together?
acrobatics, tumbling, and and cheer specifically.
Yeah. So in cheer, acrobatics, tumbling, and gymnastics, I think we're getting better.
Right.
I would not say that. I will still say 90% of our programs are majority white, if not all white.
Mhm.
And that's just a work in progress, just in
Right.
general. And, with DEI initiatives being removed from a lot of higher education plates, and it's no longer a requirement. So my concern is, are we going to even have those opportunities after this year? I don't know.
Right.
And so that will be, time will only tell. And, you know, we will have to adjust accordingly. But as a overall sport, it's progressing. At least it was
Right.
progressing. And hope that it stay progressing. But like I said, time will only tell. But as even in our officiating, we're starting to see more women of color get the opportunity to officiate at
Right.
the collegiate level that
Right.
we weren't seeing prior to the last 4 years. So it's only time will tell for sure.
So, coaching can be demanding. How do you balance that with your two kids and your husband?
I leave my work phone at work. Okay, girlfriend. I promised my kids and my husband that if
Oh,
I went back coaching, I was going to make sure that my family at home was family time and at work was work time. So
right.
I have a complete cutoff in order to keep my family sane and allow me to do the calling that I have in my life,
Right.
but also do the calling that I have on my life, because my first ministry is my home ministry, which my
Right.
husband and my children, and
Right.
everything else becomes second, third, fourth, fifth. So my ministry at home starts first, and if they're happy, then I'm happy. If they ain't happy, then we got a
Okay, so
problem.
we're gonna round this all up. So I have a great question here. Um,
Yep.
looking back on everything,
Yes.
um, high school, college, the years immediately after that, what were your three biggest struggles,
Mm.
and what could you have had then that would have helped those struggles be less of a struggle?
Ooh. Okay. So I think.
Or if you wouldn't do one struggle, we can do maybe I gave you too complicated of a question right now.
No, it's a great question. But I have to summarize it into one
Sure.
struggle.
Sure. Absolutely.
Um, Not having a personal relationship with Christ before I
Mm,
went into college and in high school. I
right.
knew who God was. I prayed to God. I
Mhm.
believed that faith is as small as a mustard seed, the whole saying, if you have a faith that's little as mercy, you can move a rock. I did believe that, but I didn't have a personal relationship with Christ. So I think the biggest thing from now, or from back then to now, is having a personal relationship with my Lord and Savior, and knowing that what he has put in my life
Right.
works for the greater good of humanity and for the purpose and calling that he has for me for his kingdom. So if I didn't know that now, I would probably be the same Regina I was then. But
Mm,
because I had went through so much over
right.
those course of those years, from the time I was in high school to about 30 years old, I had to have I had to find a higher purpose other than myself in order to survive this world. And
I get that.
so
Get that.
I think that was the biggest key for me.
Mm,
And faith has always carried me along the way. I always knew that I would be something great. I just didn't know what it was.
right. Right. What do you think your biggest value to others is today?
Oof.
Come with hard questions.
um, Actually, I'll say what my husband told me at Thanksgiving. He said he was
Okay.
thankful for the relationships that I possess with people outside of our
Aw.
family because that has brought so many unique opportunities into our family's lives personally because of the relationships that I have built authentically outside
Mm.
of our household. And
I love
so
that.
I
I
would
love
say
that.
that would definitely be my value.
Okay, and to end it, what would you if you could go back and talk to a 9-year-old Regina, what would you say to her?
Mm,
What would you say to your 9-year-old self?
it's gonna be okay.
I like that. I like that.
It's gonna
Okay, Morgan State, your competition season starts when?
February 2nd,
Okay.
is our first meet against Quinnipiac at Hamden, Connecticut. Our Orange and Blue is actually in January, but our first official meet starts February 2nd. And then our season goes as a whole for the acrobatics and tumbling goes through April 30th of each year.
Okay. Okay. And for those out there, Morgan State University, what is the website? Do you remember that off the top of your head?
For Morgan State,
Yes.
www.morganstatebears.com.
Okay. And I'll put that on the YouTube screen and I'll also put it in the show notes for everybody out there. Regina, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've loved catching up with you. You've
Yes.
got to come to Memphis. And we go out and eat. Like we can just eat for days. Um,
Yes.
yes,
Also,
absolutely.
Memphis barbecue because I hear it's the best. So
Okay, so funny thing, I was at the basketball game, Tigers game, 2 nights ago,
okay.
and right behind my seat was a scout for the LA Clippers. And
Mhm.
he was talking to everybody around us, and of course I was being nosy too because I'm like, "Oh, you're a scout. Like, who are you here scouting?" And but anyway, he was only there for the night and he was asking us for a barbecue recommendation. And
Mm,
so we referred him to Central Barbecue because it was Sunday and that was the only, and it was close to downtown. So yes, barbecue definitely can't wait to, you've got to come. We'll just take you out to eat every single night. It will be just, it will be a tour of Memphis food. Like that was the thing when I lived in Houston for 16 years and that was the thing I really missed was just Memphis food. Just loved it.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm looking forward to, girl. I got to make sure that I bring my leggings so I can eat. Expand that waist a little bit, you know what I'm saying?
We'll roll you out. We'll roll you out on the thing. Okay, so thank you so much for being here today. Thank you all for listening, especially if you've made it all the way to this part of the show. I appreciate all of your support. Another reminder to subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. My mantra is like, share, and review. Follow us on social media at 5THQRT Podcast. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.